Have you ever heard of the saying, "The devil is in the details"? Well, today we're going to talk about a man who is often called the devil himself, and whose story is filled with some of the most chilling details you can imagine. We're diving into the dark world of H. Holmes, America's first widely publicized serial killer, and the infamous building that would come to be known as the Murder Castle. Our story begins not with a castle, but with a boy named Herman Webster Mudgett, born in 1861 in a small New Hampshire town. From the outside, he seemed like a bright, privileged kid, but beneath the surface, something was amiss. Stories from his childhood are unsettling, to say the least. There are tales of him performing crude surgical experiments on animals, a terrifying foreshadowing of the horrors to come. He was fascinated by anatomy and death, a fascination that would curdle into a monstrous obsession. As a young man, he went to medical school at the University of Michigan. This is where he began to perfect his skills in manipulation and deceit. He wasn't just studying medicine. He was studying people, learning how to charm them, how to gain their trust, and ultimately how to exploit them. It's believed that during his time in school, he started his first criminal enterprise, stealing cadavers from the university lab, disfiguring them, and then cashing in on fraudulent life insurance policies he'd taken out on non-existent people. He was a con artist in a doctor's coat. After graduating, Herman Mudgett left his past and his name behind. He moved to Chicago, a city buzzing with excitement and opportunity, preparing for the great 1893 World's Columbian Exposition. He adopted a new identity, Dr. Henry Howard Holmes. It sounded respectable, trustworthy, perfect for the grand, sinister plan he was beginning to construct in his mind. In the Englewood neighborhood of Chicago, Holmes found a drugstore. He charmed his way into a job, and eventually, through a series of shady maneuvers and outright lies, he took ownership of the entire business from the widowed owner who mysteriously disappeared along with her child. Now, with the property under his control, Holmes could finally begin building his masterpiece, his murder castle. Across the street from the drugstore, he bought an empty lot and began construction on a massive 3-story building. To onlookers, it just seemed like a new hotel being built to accommodate the influx of tourists for the World's Fair. But the construction was bizarre. Holmes constantly hired and fired workers, ensuring that no single person understood the complete labyrinthine layout of the building. And what a layout it was! The ground floor was normal enough, with various storefronts, including a new pharmacy. But the upper 2 floors were a different story. They were a maze of over 100 rooms, many of them windowless. There were staircases that led to nowhere, doors that opened onto brick walls, and secret passages hidden behind panels. Holmes designed this place with one purpose in mind: to confuse, trap, and kill. Imagine checking into this hotel. Your room might have a gas pipe connected directly to it, allowing Holmes to asphyxiate you in your sleep from his office. You might try to escape, only to find yourself lost in a disorienting corridor, unable to find a way out. Some rooms were soundproofed and lined with iron plates. Others were little more than airtight vaults. The entire building was his personal, human-sized spider web, and he was the spider sitting at its center, waiting patiently. And what happened to his victims after they were trapped? The basement held even more horrors. Holmes had installed a dissection table, a crematorium, and vats of acid. He would drop his victims' bodies down secret chutes, sometimes greased for speed, that led directly to this subterranean laboratory. There, he would meticulously strip the flesh from their bones, selling the articulated skeletons to medical schools and universities. He was profiting from murder, turning human lives into a ghoulish commercial enterprise. The 1893 World's Fair brought millions of people to Chicago, and for H. Holmes, it was a hunting paradise. He preyed on young women who came to the city seeking jobs, excitement, and independence. He would hire them as his stenographers, his assistants, or promise them marriage. He was handsome, charismatic, and wealthy. He offered them the world, but he only delivered a death sentence. Many of his victims were his own employees or lovers. He would charm them, get them to sign over their life savings, or take out insurance policies with him as the beneficiary, and then they would simply ... vanish. One of his most well-known victims was Julia Connor, the wife of one of his employees. Holmes began an affair with her, and she and her young daughter, Pearl, moved into the castle. Soon after, both Julia and Pearl disappeared forever. He later wooed and married two other women, Minnie and Nanny Williams, wealthy sisters from Texas. He convinced Minnie to sign her fortune over to him, and then both she and her sister vanished from the face of the earth. The pattern was always the same: charm, exploit, and eliminate. But like all monsters, Holmes's reign of terror couldn't last forever. His undoing wasn't the murders, but his original crime: insurance fraud. He had cooked up a scheme with a man named Benjamin Petezel to fake Petezel's death and split the $10,000 insurance payout. But Holmes, true to form, decided to double-cross his partner. Instead of faking the death, he actually killed Petezel. This is where the story gets even more twisted. Holmes then took custody of 3 of Petezel's 5 children. Promising their mother he would take them to see their father, who he claimed was in hiding, he led the children and their frantic mother on a wild goose chase across the northern United States and into Canada. All the while, he was systematically murdering the children. He killed 2 of the Petezel girls in Toronto and the young boy, Howard, in a rental house in Indianapolis, where he burned his body in a stove. It was a Philadelphia detective, Frank Gayer, who finally brought Holmes's web of lies crashing down. Tasked with finding the missing Petezel children, Gayer painstakingly retraced Holmes's steps across multiple states. His dogged police work uncovered the horrific fate of the children and finally put the authorities on Holmes' trail for murder. Holmes was arrested in Boston in 1894. At first, he was only held for insurance fraud, but as investigators began to dig into his past and explore the Chicago castle, the full scope of his evil began to emerge. The building was a house of horrors. They found the secret passages, the gas chambers, the kilns. They discovered bone fragments, pieces of clothing, and strands of hair mixed into the dirt and debris of the basement. While in prison, Holmes wrote a confession. It was a masterpiece of manipulation, filled with lies and contradictions. At first, he claimed innocence. Then, he confessed to 27 murders. Later, he increased that number to over 130. To this day, no one knows the true number of his victims. Because of the nature of his disposal methods, it's almost impossible to say. Some estimates go as high as 200 people. He lied right up to the very end. On May 7th, 1896, H. Holmes was executed by hanging. His last request was bizarre and telling. He asked for his coffin to be filled with cement and buried in a 10-foot deep grave also filled with cement. The man who dissected and destroyed so many bodies was terrified of his own grave being robbed. The murder castle itself never became the museum of horror some had imagined. Shortly after Holmes's arrest, it was gutted by a mysterious fire, and what remained was finally torn down in the 1930s. Today, a post office stands on the site, with no plaque, No memoria, nothing to mark the spot where so much darkness once stood. The story of H. Holmes is a chilling reminder of the evil that can hide behind a charming smile and a respectable title. He was a product of his time, using the anonymity of a bustling city and the excitement of the World's Fair as his cover. He exploited the trust of those who saw him as a doctor, an employer, a lover. He wasn't a frenzied killer. He was a cold, calculating predator who built a factory of death. It's a haunting tale that has captivated and terrified people for over a century. A story so bizarre, it almost feels like fiction, but it was all too real. The legacy of H. Holmes serves as a dark chapter in American history, a cautionary tale about the devil you know, or in this Kazi, the devil you think you know. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive into one of history's most terrifying true crime stories. If you found this as fascinating as I did, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more content. Let me know in the comments what you think is the most shocking part of the H. Holmes story. Stay safe and see you next time.